Hey, how's it going, everyone? Good morning. Hope you are doing fantabulous, fantastic, and what I can't think of any other words, but hey, hope everyone's doing fantastic. Good morning, Dean Kulaweera here. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time Zone. I'm right here to help you folks out with various job search tips, advice, strategies, practical stuff that all of you can apply to your job search, folks. All right, so got a great session today. I'm going to be talking about something something very fundamental to your job search, right? Which is the phone interview, the pre-screen interview, whatever it is, right? This is a very important conversation. So I wanted to share with you today tips and advice to help you folks out who have phone interviews around the corner. Maybe you've had some phone interviews, you've been disappointed. You're like, Dean, I've been getting these phone interviews, and like I'm not sure if I'm even handling these things correctly, or Dean, I got rejected after the phone interview because I didn't do something real simple, and I know exactly what it is. Hey, whatever your situation is, folks, don't feel bad about yourself. You can't change the past, but you can change and influence the future. So that's what I want to do for you here on my live stream, is help all of you folks out with today phone interview tips and advice. All right, so let me just quickly tap into my Instagram live here and make sure I'm going live so my people on Instagram can see me as well. And hey, don't be shy, folks. It's been a bit of a shy group this week. You folks are not commenting much, but hey, introduce yourself in the comments. Let me know who you are, where you're tuning in from, what your position is, what your field is, what your skill set is, and all that stuff. Introduce yourself, folks. Right? You got to make yourself visible. That is your first challenge as a job seeker, is lack of visibility. Right? No one knows you exist. No one knows you're visible. So you got to make sure you're doing what it takes to make yourself visible. All right. So looks like I am live on Instagram here. So yeah, it looks like I'm live. It says pause due to a poor connection. Okay, that's not good. But it looks like we're all good. So shout out to everyone on Instagram who's tuning in. We got my friend Sneha in the house. Sneha, always good to have you here. Thanks so much for tuning in. And feel free to keep introducing yourself in the comments, folks. All right. Now, quick reminder for those of you in IT. I'm just a quick overview of this position I'm recruiting on right now. I have a client who is in the IT, in the technology solutions arena, that is looking for an IT professional services manager, right? So this is someone they want coming from a service delivery background, right? Someone who has experience managing a team of technical resources, and someone who's looking for full-time work, right? So this is in the Greater Toronto area. Must be eligible, folks. Must be eligible for secret level government clearance, all right? Because they're going to be working on on a mix of projects, some of which are going to be government related projects. So they have to be eligible for secret level government clearance. So if that sounds like you or someone you know, let me know. Let them know to send me a direct message, or send me a direct message yourself. I'm more than happy to help you folks out with that role if you're the right fit. All right. So with that being said, let's get on with today's topic. All right. So I'm going to be sharing with you today is phone interview tips and advice to help everyone out in their phone interviews. Now, quick shout out to everyone on LinkedIn, on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, tuning in. If you're watching the replay, hey, shout out to you as well. And again, mark your calendars. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time Zone. I'm right here live to help you folks out with your job search, right? With various tips and advice. Now, for those of you who might be a little fed up of seeing me, go live here on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, I'm looking to kickstart my Tech Talk series again. So I'm going to be inviting IT professionals, people from the tech space, to come in as guest speakers to talk about their field, their domain, and stuff like that. So if you're watching this, you're an IT professional, or actually, you know what? Maybe you're not even an IT professional, but you're passionate about your field, your industry. You want to talk about it? Send me a direct message, folks. I'm always looking for new guests. So if you're willing to get out your comfort zone, if you're an established, content creator on LinkedIn, feel free to send me a message. I'm happy to have you on my show as a guest and talk about, what your field is, what your industry is, and all that stuff. Man, my Instagram is going crazy. It keeps turning on and off. So I'm not sure why that's happening. So unfortunately, those of you on Instagram might be experiencing some lags. So anyway, let's get to today's topic. All right. So phone interview tips and advice. Be prepared to take notes, folks. And again, keep the comments coming. Any questions you have about phone interviews, let me know in the comments. If you have any advice you want to share yourself about phone interviews, feel free to share it in the comments. All right. Don't be shy. And feel free to do that. I'm happy to hear. I would definitely want to hear about what you folks are experiencing in your phone interviews, right? Now, the phone interview, before I get to the best practices for your phone interviews, I first wanted to establish why are phone interviews so important, right? Some of you might be like, Dean, it's just a phone interview. It's not a big deal. It's just a pre-screen. So, what's the big deal with this whole thing? I'm just going to stop the Instagram live. There's some major glitches going on. So apologies to everyone on Instagram. It's just going all crazy and wonky. So apologies for that, everyone. Why is the phone interview so important, right? Why is this conversation so important? So I posted about this on my LinkedIn stories this morning, and I think I posted about this on my Instagram as well. And that is the reason why the phone interview is so important, folks, because it is the conversation that determines if further conversations will take place. So before getting into the best practices, the tips that I'm going to be sharing in regards to how you should prepare for your phone interviews, let's first establish what the purpose of the phone interview is from the hiring manager's point, or even from the recruiter's standpoint, right? What are they trying to accomplish from the phone interview? Well, the phone interview is basically so that the hiring team, the recruitment team, whoever it is, so they can determine whether they want to spend more time putting you through their interview process. That's basically the essence of why phone interviews exist and why phone interviews are held. It's to save time, right? And if we go back to pre-COVID-19, this was in order to save time both for yourself and for the hiring team, right? So instead of calling you right away on premises, only to find out that you're not the right fit, or they're not the right fit, or there's no mutual fit, the purpose of the phone interview was to help save that time, right? So it's basically a conversation where both parties, you as well as the organization, you get on a phone call and you have a kind of maybe a high level chat or a general chit chat about the role, the position, as well as yourself, what you bring to the table, and all that good stuff, to see if yes, this does warrant a further conversation. Now, if your phone interview is with a recruiter, what the recruiter is trying to establish is, hey, will I be wasting the time of the hiring team by inviting this person for the first interview? That's what the recruiter is trying to figure out. And if it's a hiring manager your phone interview is with, it's so that the hiring manager can figure out, hey, does this person meet the bare minimum for this role, so I can schedule a further conversation to see if they have everything that's required for the position. So look, I'm laying down this as a foundation, folks, to help you understand why this conversation is so important. So if you have a phone interview scheduled, do not take this conversation lightly. This is a very important conversation, right? The fact that it's a phone interview, don't let that fool you and think, oh yeah, it's just a phone interview. It's just a general high level conversation, or yeah, it's just with the recruiter, Dean. It's not a big deal. It's just a phone interview. The recruiter doesn't know anything, blah blah. No, folks, take this conversation very, very seriously. Even if the phone interview is with a recruiter or with an HR manager or with a staffing agency recruiter, maybe, right? Whatever the case is. Right? If it's some middle person there, right, between you and the hiring team, they're trying to figure out, or they're trying to make sure that they're not going to waste the time of the hiring team. Why? Because the hiring team, the whole interview process is very time consuming for hiring managers, because hiring managers have to step away from their core duties and responsibilities to set aside 1 hour or whatever time it is to meet with the people that they need to meet with, right? And if it ends up being, the wrong person, guess what? The hiring team has just wasted like a half an hour or full hour of their time's worth away from their core duties and responsibilities, right? So because of this is why the phone interview is very, very, very much in place, and definitely something that many organizations and many recruitment teams, HR teams utilize to make sure they're not wasting the time of the hiring manager and the hiring team. All right. So it's a very important conversation. Now, let's get into the meat of it, right? So you're like, okay, Dean, I get that. I understand now. Give me some tips, Dean, on how I can score, a win in this conversation. Now, some of these tips, folks, they're going to be very basic, and it's no coincidence why I'm going over these very basic things, because I've seen so many people flunk or fail phone interviews just because they did not do these very basic things. So I'm going to go over some basic things, some intermediate level things, and I'm going to go over some advanced level stuff as well. All right. So stay in there and be prepared to take notes. Now, tip number one, again, this is such a basic thing, but so many people have screwed this up. Right. Tip number one, always, folks, reconfirm the phone number, right? Whether it's them calling you at a number, or whether it's, they want you to call them at some conference bridge or at their company. Whatever it is, always reconfirm the phone number, right? If the phone interview is being confirmed over the phone, repeat the number back to them, right? Reconfirm the phone number. You do not want to end up with any miscommunication with this regards. And also, not just reconfirm the number, but also confirm who's calling who. Like, are you folks calling me, or do you want me to call, you folks, right? Because sometimes they'll send you a calendar invite with their number, but that doesn't mean that, they want you to call them. Like, they're going to be the ones calling you. Or sometimes vice versa. It might have the calendar invite might have your number, but they actually expect you to call them. So always clarify this stuff, folks, because you don't want it to come down to them thinking that you didn't properly confirm this stuff, you didn't properly read the instructions, or whatever the case is. You do not want anything, leave any of that aspect to chance, right? So always reconfirm which number you have to call. First of all, who's calling who? Is it you calling them, or is it them calling you? And secondly, reconfirm the number, right? If it's your number, you want to reconfirm, let them know, hey, again, this is my phone number. Look forward to speaking with you soon. If it's their number, hey, just wanted to reconfirm, this is the phone number that I'm going to be calling, and these are the conference bridge details, blah, 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 whatever. Reconfirm it, folks. All right. Again, you do not want to end up with any miscommunication in regards to this and waste time trying to figure out why they're not calling, or wondering, whether you should be the one calling them. So that is tip number one. Now, tip number two is, and again, this is something I've seen so many people fail to do, right? Unfortunately. And I shouldn't even be having to give this advice, but folks, be prepared to take the call. All right. Or if it's you calling some conference bridge, be prepared to make the call in that case. All right. There's no such thing as being fashionably late when it comes to interviews. All right. You want to do that at your parties, or, you got some parties going on and stuff. You want to show up late to look cool. Feel free to do that, but not when it's interview time. All right. When it's interview time, even if the interviewer shows up late, hey, that's their problem, right? That's going to affect your perspective of them. Okay. That's their problem. But you at your end, you need to be prepared to take the call on time. Or if you have to call the number, then you got to be prepared to call that number on time. Okay. Now, in addition to simply being prepared to take the call or make the call, the other thing is you can't be half asleep, right? I remember early on when I started out in recruitment, early on in my career, I remember once I presented a candidate for a position, and the first step in the process was they had a phone interview set up. And so something I do as a recruiter is always after the interview, the phone interview or whatever interview is it, I always call my candidate who I'm representing, and I get their feedback, right? Like, how did it go? And, who did you speak with? What were they asking you about? Blah, blah, all that stuff. And from the candidate standpoint, they were like, oh yeah, Dean, it went perfectly fine. It was great, blah, 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 whatever. But then I also got feedback from the client, right? And the client said, hey, look, we're going to pass on this candidate. It was clearly visible that this individual just woke up from like a nap or something. Or, they weren't really 100% present, and they sounded like they were just asleep, and they just responded to the phone call, at that point. And they passed on the candidate, folks, right? Now, those of you watching might be like, well, Dean, that's unfair. People shouldn't be so strict about that stuff. Folks, first impressions do count, all right? Like, there's no excuse. You need to be, not only should you be prepared to take the call or make the call, but you have to be, fresh, ready. You can't be like half asleep or just woke up from your nap. And you're like, okay, I'm not going to set the alarm because they're going to call me at 2 p.m. anyway, and that's going to be my alarm. No, folks, you need to be fresh, ready to handle this conversation, all right? And let me know in the comments, folks, what your experiences have been with phone interviews. Like, how are you preparing? What are you doing to prepare for the phone interview? I definitely want to hear all of you folks are saying in the comments as well. So feel free to put that in the comments. All right, now going on to tip number 3, very important. Do your due diligence. Again, another thing that so many people miss out on. Research the company, folks. Research the company. Like, this is not a very difficult thing to do in the information age that we're in, right? Very simple to go to the company website and simply have at least a high level understanding of what the company does, what are their major products, services, solutions. Do they have any keystone achievements that that they've accomplished recently? Have they received some kind of award recently? What are their community efforts, their philanthropic efforts? Basically anything you can find on the website. Now, do not go too much into this. Right now, there's two extremes here. Some of you are not doing any research at all, and then there's another group of you that go way too much. Like, you spend like 5 hours researching the company. Now, you do not need to research the company for 5 hours, folks. You do not need to be an expert on each and every aspect of the company. But what you need to do is you need to be able to answer the question, right? A typical phone interview question, especially if it's a full-time position. The company, whoever it is you're speaking with, they will ask you, so what do you know about our company, or what interests you about our company? And unfortunately, I've seen many job seekers, well, I wouldn't say many, but here and there, I see many job seekers unable to respond to that question because they simply did not research the company, right? And it's such a simple thing to do, and it's one of those things that if you don't do this, you kind of want to slap yourself in the head and say, wow, I actually failed this interview for such a simple thing that I could have done. So do not make this mistake, folks. Right? And this is something I always go through when I'm doing the interview preparation is, do your research, do your due diligence, research the company, know what they do, know what their major primary products, services, and solutions are. If there's any information related to, the division that you're going to be joining on the website, then, hey, research that. Be able to answer the question, what do you know about us, or what interests you about working for us? What do you know about our company, et cetera, et cetera. So Sneha, my friend Sneha says in the comments, know what position you may have applied for and keep the job posting handy. Yeah, exactly. Great point here, Sneha. I'm actually going to talk about this later, but absolutely. And this is something that I also, always remind people when I'm doing an interview preparation with them is, especially if it's a phone interview, folks, right? It's good to have the job description right in front of you as well. And you should be familiar with the job description as well. But otherwise, you're going to be winging it. You're not going to know what's going on. You're not going to know what's happening. And guess what? The job description, just and it's great that you mentioned this, Neha. The job description, folks, it's such a great reference point for you to ask your own questions as well, right? When it comes to that point where you're asking questions about the position, the role, and all that stuff. So definitely agree with you here, Sneha. Great advice there. You should have the job posting handy right there in front of you, folks, right? If you have a phone interview schedule. So great comments. I forgot that I didn't disable that thing there. All right. So great comment there, Sneha. Definitely agree with you on that. Now, other thing is, and going on to the next part is, which is exactly what Sneha said is, hey, you gotta familiarize yourself with the job description, or review the requirement. If you're being represented by a staffing agency, then review the requirements with your staffing agency contact. All right. Now, if your point of contact is a corporate recruiter at the company, I'm not sure if they will actually take the time to kind of fill you in with each and every detail. Like, they will definitely provide you with information about the position, the role, the opportunity, all that stuff. But you got to make sure you're having that conversation while you have the corporate recruiter on the phone with you, folks. All right. So take advantage of that initial conversation where they're going to break it down for you. Okay, so these are the details about the role. This is the project, blah, blah, blah. And then they set up a phone interview for you. Well, before that next phone interview, you got to make sure you get the details from your recruiter contact at the organization. Now, if you're being represented by a staffing agency, you got to be able to get that information from the staffing agency themselves. If all you have is a job description, right? Maybe you applied directly and right away they want to schedule you for a phone interview. Maybe all you have is a job description. So you got to go by what's on the job description in that case, just like how Sneha said, right? So familiarize yourself with the job description, or review the requirements in detail with the recruiter or whoever your point of contact is. If you're applying directly, folks, a job description might be the only material that you have to prepare for this conversation, right? I know it's not ideal. I know it's not the ideal situation. I know you're like, hey, a lot of times, Dean, these job descriptions are just like all over the place. And that is true, folks, right? But it is all you have. So if that's all you have, that's what you got to refer to in preparation, all right? So be very, very familiar with your job description, right? And if nothing else, that familiarity will allow the hiring team to correct you on, hey, this part of the job description is not really accurate. This is what's really going on. and etc., etc. And also, just like I mentioned before, if nothing else, it's gonna help you prepare questions that you can ask from the interviewer, right, on the phone interview, whoever that interviewer is, whether it's an HR manager, a recruiter, or maybe it's directly with the hiring manager as well. The job description is a great source for you to create and develop your own questions, even on the fly, even like on the fly as well, right? So keep this in mind. Now, if you're being represented by a staffing agency, depending on the strength of the relationship the agency has with their client, the staffing agency will also be able to provide you with great information and intel on what to expect on the phone interview, especially if it's a long-term relationship the agency has with their client. I spoke about this in detail on my stream yesterday when I was speaking about the benefits of being represented by an agency. So if you missed that, check that out, folks. But this is, again, if the agency has a strong relationship with this client, they'll be able to give you a heads up on what to expect on the phone interview, especially if the phone interview is pretty standard, like it's always the same routine. The agency will be able to give you a heads up on that, and they'll be able to provide you with that intel, background information on the company, the project, the opportunity, and even the person that you'll be speaking with, right? They'll be like, okay, they're very direct, they're to the point, or they might say, hey, they're going to do some small talk, they're going to do some chat, so be prepared for that before talking about the actual role and position, whatever it is. So take advantage of that, folks, and ensure you get any such information as much as possible before the phone conversation, before the phone interview, so you can prepare. Now, moving on, next tip, very important, refresh yourself on your own resume and CV, all right? Do not think that the recruiter, the HR manager, the hiring manager on the phone interview, do not think that they've memorized your resume and they already know everything they need to know. And don't think that they're just going to have you on the phone and go over your resume themselves and then make their own mind about whether they want to move you on to the first in-person or video interview. That's not going to happen, folks. You need to be the one doing the selling. So anything on your resume is a potential question that they will ask you, right? So this is why I'm saying refresh yourself on your resume, on your or CV, whatever part of the, depending on your part of the world, maybe you call it a CV, whatever it is. You need to be the expert on your own resume or your own CV. And again, like I said, every bullet point that you have on your resume is a potential question the hiring manager, the recruiter, or the HR manager might ask you, right? And you do not want to waste time trying to remember things, trying to recall things that happened that they asked you about on the resume that was from like a year or two ago and you can't remember the details. No, refresh yourself on everything on your resume, folks, especially the relevant stuff, right? The stuff relevant to the position you're applying for, and especially the stuff in more recent years as well, right? So make sure you're doing that. Refresh yourself on your resume and your CV, because that is the only information the phone interviewer has in front of them that represents you, right? They haven't met you yet. They don't know you yet. This is probably their first time speaking with you. And guess what? The resume is the only thing they have in front of them that represents you and who you are. So I guarantee you they're gonna be asking you questions based on what they see on your resume. So you got to be an expert on your resume. All right. So next tip. Now, this goes to the actual, more so the technical aspects of the phone interview, right? Technical aspects in terms of, are you in an area with a strong cell phone network signal? All right. Unfortunately, there's been cases where, people are in an area with a weak signal. They can't properly communicate over the phone, and it just becomes very frustrating and annoying. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to result in you being rejected, folks. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is it can affect the flow of the conversation. It can affect the rapport. And yes, it is possible to build good rapport with someone over the phone, right? Building rapport is not something that only happens if you meet someone over video or in person. It is possible to build great rapport with someone over the phone. But guess what? If you have a bad cell phone signal, right, and it's not working properly, that affects the flow of the conversation, right? Imagine you and I have a great conversation. We're talking about something. We're talking about the project. And then suddenly, your audio keeps cutting in and out. That affects the flow. It affects the rapport. It affects the relationship we're kind of building as we're going along in the conversation. So as much as possible, folks, make sure you are in an area with a strong cell phone signal, right? Do not assume it's going to be a strong cell phone signal area. Maybe you're in your room, right? And especially now, in current times, maybe you're in an area, you're mostly using your Wi-Fi. Maybe that day of the phone call, the Wi-Fi goes down, so you got to use your phone signal. And now suddenly you're in your room, your cell phone signal is not a very strong signal, so because you can't use WhatsApp or whatnot. So now you got to use your whatever your cell phone provider is, and they got a weak signal in the area of your house, your room, your condo, wherever it is. So these things, you got to prepare for these things, right? So ensure you're in an area where you got a strong cell phone signal. And also in relation to that, make sure your cell phone is juiced up. If you're using a cell phone for this conversation, you do not want your cell phone to die in the middle of the conversation. So make sure it's juiced up, or make sure it's on full battery and it's ready to go. All right. Now, other thing is, ensure that you're in a noise-free, distraction-free environment, folks, as much as possible. Now, I did want to say, in the midst of COVID and the current environment where most of us are working remotely, we might, some of us might have kids running around, some of us have pets. All right, and now most interviewers are going to be empathetic about this. Okay, they're going to be understanding, because the entire world, okay, planet Earth is going through a very similar situation right now, where we're all remote, we're all at home. Sometimes some of us, our kids are homeschooling. Some of us, our families are home. Maybe we got pets at home. Whatever your situation is, most interviewers are going to be understanding about that, right? Because chances are they're in the same situation. Now, that being said, that does not mean do not exercise control over your environment. As much as possible, folks, you have to make sure you're in a noise-free, distraction-free area where you can speak clearly and freely. Now, this is not just to be respectful of the interviewer, but this is more so for selfish reasons. I'm telling you to be selfish right now, because if you're in a noise-free, distraction-free environment, this means you're able to focus on the conversation. You're not distracted by anything in your environment. So be in a noise-free and distraction-free free environment, right? So this is pretty self-explanatory, right? Because if you got background noise, you got your pets barking, or whatever it is that they're doing, you got your kids in the area, maybe they're crying or they're asking you for stuff. Hey, it's totally understandable, right? But these interruptions will affect your ability, your train of thought, your ability. Maybe you were thinking about saying something, right? It can distract you from these things, and it can affect your ability to properly communicate your value, right? So as much as possible, folks, ensure you're in a noise-free, distraction-free environment where you're not going to be, distracted by anything else as much as possible, right? And this will prevent you from, these interruptions will prevent you or distract you from effectively communicating your value on the phone interview. And you don't want that to happen, all right? And also ensure in advance of the call that all these things are taken care of. And you're ready to take the call and all of that stuff. Now, my friend Sneha here in the comments made a good point. Sneha says, always have a reason for leaving your previous organizations is something they will ask. Yeah. So look, folks, I know a lot of you job seekers get annoyed when recruiters or HR people or organizations ask you this stuff, but they will be asking you this. Okay. So this is a great point you brought up, Sneha. They will ask you this, folks, when they're going over your resume. So be prepared to explain your motivations for leaving your previous organizations. Now, some of you might be like, oh, Dean, well, how is that anyone's business? Like, who cares why I left the previous organization? Yeah, it is something important, folks. And I'll tell you why. They're not evaluating the reason itself. What they are evaluating is your motivation, right? What motivated you to leave this previous organization or the organization before that? Why? Because the organization, they're trying to assess whether you have the right motivations for wanting to join their organization. Because if you don't, guess what? You're going to leave their organization. So that is the real underlying concern, right? And that is what the recruiter is trying to evaluate. That's what the HR manager is trying to evaluate. That's what the hiring team is trying to evaluate as well, right? They're trying to evaluate your motivation. So yeah, great point here, Sneha. You have to be able to explain, folks, your motivations for leaving your previous organizations. Of course, unless it's something extremely private, maybe you had some personal medical conditions or stuff like that. I mean, it's up to you. Maybe you want to mention that at a very high level, like a surface level, but you don't need to go into like deep details if that's the scenario. But you do need to explain your reasons for leaving previous organizations. All right. So great point there, Sneha. Thanks for bringing that up. Very important, folks, right? Like these things might seem very simple and basic, but they're so important. Now, next thing is, hey, have good phone manners, folks. All right. I spoke about this. I think it was last week, or I don't know. Time is kind of blurred to me now. I can't remember what I spoke about in yesterday's live stream or even last week's live stream, but I'm pretty sure I covered this. Have good manners, right? Refrain from interrupting the interviewer, no matter how excited you are about responding to the question. Because for two reasons. First of all, it's just annoying, right? And it's impolite and it's unprofessional if you keep interrupting the phone interviewer. But the other reason is their question they're asking might have multiple parts to it. There might be a multiple component question. And if you keep interrupting before they complete the question, then you're being annoying and you're being unprofessional. So wait until they complete asking the question before you start responding, right? This is so important as part of your interview preparation. You got to wait until the question is completely being asked before you start responding, right? Otherwise, you're going to annoy people and it's just going to be unprofessional. It's going to be rude. It's going to be impolite. All right. So very simple tip there, but make sure you remember this. Now, other thing is, as you're formulating your responses, make sure your responses are concise and to the point. So you need to strike the right balance, folks, between not being so vague and abrupt and all that stuff, where you're just, you come across as not knowing the stuff, or you go on into this whole long drawn out speech where you're basically performing a verbal surgery just to get a clear and informative response, right? And it appears like you're avoiding responding to the question. Either of those scenarios are not good. You want to go smack right in the middle. You want to be concise, direct, straight to the point. And at the same time, you don't want to provide those responses that are like all over the place as well. So you got to be right in the middle. Make sure in your responses you're being direct, concise, and straight to the point. Now, next tip is prepare your own questions. You have to prepare your own questions, folks, because this allows you, right, at the phone interview stage, to further evaluate the opportunity, at least at this point of the conversation or at this point of the process. So prepare your own questions. Now, you can prepare your own questions from the job description. You can prepare your own questions based on what the interviewer has been asking you so far in the phone call. There's just no excuse as to why you should not prepare your own questions. Now, even if you didn't prepare your own questions, again, as you're having the conversation, you should be able to derive and even make a quick note of some things you want to further clarify and ask them about. So remember, you got to ask your own questions. I have had candidates been rejected by clients simply because they did not ask their own questions, right? Now, some of you might be wondering, well, Dean, what's the big deal? I mean, if I don't have any questions, I don't have any questions. What if they already told me the stuff I need to know? Folks, there's always questions to ask. Why? Because on the conversation itself, you will learn new things about the opportunity, about the project, about the organization, which should give you plenty of material for you to ask your own questions. And when you don't ask questions, it appears to the organization that you're not just interested in them, right? Because when you're not asking questions, it appears to them that, hey, maybe this person's not excited about us. Maybe they're not as interested about this opportunity. Maybe we're just one of many interviews that they're going for, and we're just another number to them. And maybe that's the case. But hey, guess what? If it's an opportunity you like, folks, that you feel is interesting, you like, that you're excited about, you want to ask your own questions as well. So they see that you're motivated and enthusiastic, and you want to move through in the remainder of the process, right? Now, other tip is tone of voice. Now, this is extremely important. Your tone of voice is very, 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 very important, folks. On the phone interview, you pretty much only have your tone of voice to convey your enthusiasm, friendliness, confidence, your personality, basically in a nutshell. Right now, in a video interview, in an in-person on-site interview, you know what they say, right? 80% of communication is body language. Well, guess what? On the phone interview, there is no body language on the phone call, right? So your tone of voice is very, very important in how you communicate. Right now, I'm not saying if you're someone who's quiet, introverted, I'm not saying pretend to be someone who's high, pumped up, energetic. That's not what I'm saying. And vice versa. If you're someone pumped up, energetic, I'm not saying tone it down and don't do that. What I'm saying is you have to use your tone of voice to convey your personality so that the phone interviewer can at least visualize how you're expressing yourself right now, right? Whatever that is. So you got to make sure that you're using your tone of voice to convey your personality, whatever your personality is, right? So you can make that connection and build that rapport with the person on the other side of the phone. So be sure to make use of it, folks. Like, it's completely normal to feel nervous and anxious when speaking to a complete stranger. I totally get that. But let your enthusiasm shine through your tone of voice, right? In whatever way you choose to convey that enthusiasm, based on your personality, but use your tone of voice, use that tonality to communicate who you are, right, as a human being, because that's very important. That's going to help you, make up for the lack of body language, because you can't judge them, you can't see what they're saying, and they can't see what you're saying in terms of how you're communicating, right? And this is why they say, hey, it's always good to smile when you're on the phone, because the person on the other end can apparently actually feel your smile if you're smiling. And that's something very true. Like, as someone who works in recruitment, like when I'm making cold calls, when I'm calling on candidates, I always make sure I smile because that warmness does come across in my tone, Whether now I don't know if that's some magical thing, or maybe it's just something that subconsciously happens. I don't know, but it does work, folks. All right, so keep this in mind for your phone interviews. All right, so look, I hope these phone interview tips help. I'm going to get into the questions shortly, and feel free to let me know any questions you might have. So I'm going to quickly review the tips, but just a reminder, folks, if you found these tips helpful, definitely make sure you hit me up with a like and a reshare. And I'm going to get to the question shortly. And in the meantime, while I'm reviewing today's tips, I want you to start writing your questions in the comments so I can get to your questions right away. All right. So what was the first tip I went over? Always reconfirm which number you want them to call, or which number they want you to call if it's a phone interview, right? Always reconfirm the phone number. Which number they got to call, if they got to call you, and if it's a number that you got to call, make sure you reconfirm the number and the time and the date and all that stuff. Always reconfirm that stuff. Number two is you got to make sure that you're prepared to take the call. Always be prepared to take a call. No, do not take the call right after you, if you know you're going to be napping or sleeping or something, or sleeping in the morning. You're better off rescheduling the phone call in that case, right? You got to be fresh. You got to be ready. You got to be alert. You got to be prepared. You got to be present for the phone call, folks. All right. So make sure you do that. Next tip is do your due diligence. You got to research the company. Be able to answer the question. Hey, what do you know about our company? What do you know about us? Why are you interested in our company? Why are you interested in considering working for us? In order to do that, you got to be able to know about the company. So do your research about the company, know what they do, know what their top products, services, and solutions are. If it's for a specific division you're working on, if there's information about that division on their website, research that. Know information about the division, all right? And be able to basically answer the question, how do you know about us, or what do you know about us, right? Now, next tip is familiarize yourself with the job description, or if you have a point of contact at the organization, review the requirements with them, right, prior to the phone interview. So you're ready to have that conversation, and also have a source of questions that you can ask as well, right? Now, next tip is refresh yourself on your own resume or your own CV, all right? You have to be the expert on your resume and your CV, because they're going to be, all they have in front of them is your resume and your CV, and they will be referring to it, all right? And by the way, make sure you have your own resume in front of you as well, so you know exactly what they're referring to if they point out to something and you're not sure what they're asking you about. Now, other thing is, ensure as much as possible, folks, you're in a noise-free, distraction-free area where you can speak clearly and freely, right? As much as possible, you want to control your environment. If you exercise control over those things you do have control over, you will, folks, have better ability to navigate those things you do not have control over, right? So exercise as much control over your immediate environment as much as possible. Other tip, make sure if you're using a cell phone, you're in an area with a strong network signal, your cell phone battery is juiced up, it's fully charged, and you're not going to have to worry about your audio cutting in and out because of a weak signal, or your phone dying out because it ran out of battery. So make sure that's in check. Other tip, have good phone manners, folks. Do not interrupt the interviewer constantly. Do not constantly interrupt them. Allow them to finish asking the question before you start responding. Next tip is make sure your responses are not too vague and abrupt, and not too long drawn out as well. You got to be smack right in the middle, concise, direct, to the point in your responses, right? So if you're being too abrupt, too vague, it's going to be, they're going to take it as you not knowing your stuff. If you're too long drawn out in your responses, they're going to take it like you're trying to avoid answering the question. All right. So keep this in mind. Next tip, prepare your own questions. You always have to prepare your own questions. This is going to convey interest, enthusiasm, and also it allows you to gather more information about the position, the opportunity, and all that stuff, and allows you to make pivots if necessary. And we'll give you an idea of more details about the project, the opportunity, and all that fun stuff. And then the final tip was tone of voice. Tone of voice is extremely important, folks. On the phone interview, all you have to convey your personality, who you are, your confidence, your enthusiasm, your interest, and all that stuff is your tone of voice. They can't see you, right? So that 80% of communication being body language thing, you can't take advantage of that. It's going to be through your tone of voice. So make use of your tone of voice. Use your tone of voice to convey your personality, all right? So, hey, I hope these tips today helped you on your phone interviews. If you have any questions, I'm going to go through the questions right now. So we got Gurpreet in the house. Hey, Gurpreet, good to see you here. And thanks so much for tuning in. Temi Tope says, what exactly is pre-screening interview? Should I prepare for core interview questions? So Temi Tope, I actually covered this early on in the segment. A pre-screening interview is basically an interview that allows the organization to decide if you meet at least, at a high level, if you meet the requirements. and whether this, assuming you do meet those requirements, whether this warrants a further, more detailed conversation. All right. So if you didn't watch that Temi Tope, watch the replay. Maybe after I end this session, rewind to the beginning where I explained the purpose of the pre-screen or the phone interview. All right. So make sure you check that out. And you also asked, should I prepare for core interview questions? You know what? To be on the safe side, Temi Tope, I always say, hey, it's better to go in over prepared versus going in unprepared, right? So just in case it does become a very, very hard, technical interview, I would say, Temi Tope, just to be on the safe side, yeah, why not? Just prepare, prepare for even the in-depth technical questions, the core questions. Yeah, might as well prepare for those as well, just in case. Because if your pre-screen, if your initial phone interview if it's with a hiring manager, they might go in depth, right? They might be like, hey, this person sounds like they know their stuff. Let's go a little bit in depth. So it might happen. Or if your conversation is with a recruiter, with an HR manager or something like that, and maybe it's a small company, they might say, hey, you know what, Temi Tope, the hiring manager is available right now. Let me transfer you to them right now, and maybe you can, yeah, and they want to speak to you right now. And if that's the case, you want to take advantage of the opportunity, then you definitely want to be able to talk about your stuff in depth, Temi Tope, right? So to be on the safe side, yes, I would say prepare for the core interview questions, just in case you have that opportunity to speak with the hiring manager right away or go in depth right away. All right. So great question there. Thanks for tuning in, Temi Tope. Good to have you here. Gurpreet says, great tips, Dean. Thanks, Gurpreet. Appreciate that. Gurpreet said you should know your stuff inside out, know your entire experience inside out. Yeah, absolutely, totally agree with that. And Gurpreet also says, do not sound like a robot. Too many people Google and sound just like what Google has said to you. Yeah, exactly, Gurpreet. And you know what? This is something I totally agree with. And like I see so many people doing this way too often, right? A lot of you folks are like, okay, let me Google what the correct response for this is. Let me Google the correct response for this or this or this. Folks, the correct response is your experience, right? What is your experience? A lot of you folks are Googling stuff, and this is why you're not standing out at your interviews, right? Gurpreet and I, I partnered up with Gurpreet on one of our boot camps in the past, a couple of our boot camps in the past, and we used to talk about this all the time. Like a lot of you folks, are spending way too much time on Google trying to find out the perfect response, when the perfect response is your response, right? Your response based on your experiences, your challenges, your successes, your wins, your understanding, right? It's based on that. So this is why so many of you going for the interviews, you're memorizing these responses on Google, and you go to the interview and the hiring team's like, okay, this person sounds like a robot. And they can clearly, people are not stupid, folks. Listen to what I'm saying, folks. People are not stupid, all right? People can tell when something is being memorized and you're just reciting something you saw on the internet. People can tell. So go in there, right, and have a conversation. Like, know your stuff. Obviously, you should know your stuff, but have a conversation. This is a conversation, right? The phone interview, whether it's a phone interview, a video interview, an in-person interview, it is a conversation. Just have a conversation like a human being. You are the expert. You should know your stuff, but how you respond should be based on your experiences, your challenges, your viewpoints, your perspective. That is what they want to know, folks. All right. So make sure that you check that out. So great point here, Gurpreet. Definitely agree with you on that. And Gurpreet says, don't answer based on what you think the interviewer wants to hear. Instead, answer the question based on your experience. Yeah, exactly, right? Gurpreet says, Dean, remember our IT bootcamp, how many people sounded like a robot? Yeah, exactly, Gurpreet, right? And this is the mistake so many of you folks are making, folks. Like you're thinking that you got to memorize some fancy response, but you don't. Like, you have to speak about your experiences, what you bring to the table. That's what the hiring team wants to know. That's what they want to know. They want to know you. They want to know you. Who is this person? What do you think? What are your experiences in this? That's what they're trying to figure out. So this is why memorizing stuff on Google, stuff that you Google on the internet, is going to backfire. It's not going to be as impressive or as genuine or as authentic as you explaining what your experiences was and what you bring to the table, right? So keep this in mind, folks. Very, very important for you, right? So Gurpreet says, hey, this time I remembered you're going live at 11 a.m. So I'm going to go live at 12 p.m. Eastern today. All right, awesome, Gurpreet. Hey, folks, make sure you check out Gurpreet. She's going live today at 12 p.m. Eastern. So check out her live streams as well for more great information about, job search related tips, topics, and strategies. All right. So it looks like that's all the questions, folks. So I'm going to wrap up this session. Hey, everyone have a great weekend. And just a reminder for those of you, by the way, I wanted to share a free resource For those of you who have interviews, right, whether it's a phone interview or an in-person interview or a video interview, make sure you download my free PDF, right? 3 killer questions you need to be asking the interviewer at your interviews so you can better understand the project, the motivation, the hiring motivation, what the team is going through, and what they're looking for in an ideal candidate, right? So download my free PDF. 3 killer questions you need to be asking the interviewer, right? You can download it at dkglobaltalent.com. That's my website, dkglobaltalent.com. Download it at dkglobaltalent.com. Make sure you check it out, folks. And that's going to be very resourceful for you in your interviews, all right? Now, other thing is, for those of you who are applying for jobs online, you're not getting responses from hiring teams, check out my new course. More details about my new course, Applying to Jobs Online 101, the 3-step process for applying to jobs online the right way. All right. So make sure you check it out. It's on special pricing right now, $97 Canadian. Check out more details at dkglobaltalent.com/get interviews, dkglobaltalent.com/get interviews, dkglobaltalent.com/get interviews. Check it out, folks. And hey, if you have any questions about that, feel free to let me know. All right. So, folks, make sure you hit me up with a like. Make sure you tune in and mark your calendars every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern time zone. I'm going to be right here to share job search tips, advice, and strategies that'll help you folks in your job search. All right. We got a question here from Temitope. It says, what kind of questions can the candidates ask after the conversation about the role or the company? Yeah, so Temitope, you can download my free PDF, right? The one that I shared just now, where I actually detail three questions, three by the way, 3 powerful questions, folks, that you all of you got to be asking at your interview. So that, again, that link, you can find that on my website, Temitope. It's at dkglobaltalent.com right here, dkglobaltalent.com, dkglobaltalent.com. Check it out, Temitope. Hope that helps, and that should answer your question, all right? So, folks, again, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern time zone. I'm right here live to help you folks out in your job search, bringing you job search tips, advice, strategies to help you out in your job search. Hey, have a fantastic weekend, folks. And by the way, next week, I'm going to have some special guest in on, I think it's on Wednesday. If you're a business analyst, you have an interest in business analysis, I got my friend Imal Bariali joining me, right? And he's going to be joining me as a guest on Wednesday. We're going to be talking about business analysis. We're going to be talking about trends in the marketplace. Imal has some very controversial thoughts about Agile and Scrum and all that stuff. So, hey, I'm definitely going to be asking him about that stuff. I'm going to put him on the spot. I'm going to have him speak about these things and speak about this stuff. And I'd love to have you folks join us on that conversation next week. All right. So, hey, see you next week, folks. And again, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern time zone. I'm right here to help you folks out in your job search. Right. Everyone have a fantastic remainder of the week. And hey, see you somewhere down the road, folks. See you next time. All right. Take care. Bye.